Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name's Matt Lehman, and I work on Django apps on this stream. And we're going to continue on the homeschool application this evening. My plan is to work on the onboarding flow of that. I'm getting close to the end, and I've got a couple more forms to do, some polish to add to it, and then just overall fit and finish kind of stuff. So we'll get to some of that this evening. If this is your first time joining, thank you. We work on web development and stuff, and particularly Django and Python. So you're free to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. That's what I'm here for. And you can follow my journey here as I work on this app. I have a bunch of ways that you can get in touch with me if you want to in the future, including a website that's linked above there at mattlehman.com. It's got a mailing list where I write about Python and Django type topics. I have a social media presence on Twitter, and I've got a GitHub and all that sort of stuff, usually under the handle of MB Lehman. And if you're enjoying the content and you want to contribute financially, if you're able to do so, that would be awesome. I have an account on Patreon, patreon.com/MBLehman, where you can help out that way. It helps cover costs of stuff that I do, like podcast hosting and all these other things that I try and do for the Django community. I do want to shout out to my current patrons of my superhero patron of Rupert, and then my other patrons of Abdulaziz, Patrick, and Eric. You guys are awesome. So thank you. All right, let's get into it. So what are we working on today? I've got this onboarding milestone that I have been working on. I mean, look at some of the age of these are back in April now. So I stopped working on them to focus on other features that my spouse needed as she was preparing for the school year, because she's the primary customer of this thing. But I'm coming back to these things because she's kind of in a mode where she's ready to input her data for her upcoming school year, because we run on the calendar year at my house, but not quite ready to get started yet. So I have this this window of time where I can do some other things that I think are important. Hey, Kohatli, welcome. Thanks for joining in again. So the thing I thought I'd do is get back to the startup of the app. So when you first join the application, the plan is to give you kind of a walkthrough of here are the steps that you need to get the minimum amount of data to start getting value out of the app, to see how it's going to work in practice, and to kind of introduce you to the basic terminology that are important in the application that I'm working on. So I'm going to fire up the application. We can take a look at what that looks like today, and we can see the piece that remains to do. Hopefully everything's working. I kind of blew up my environment the other day with some brew updates, but I think I got it back to a healthy state. We'll see if that's true in a minute. Web server's taking some time, but all looks good there. Yeah, that's a good question. My dot files are public on GitHub. So if you go to GitHub MB Lehman and dot files, and you can see how I've set everything up. My scheme here, the basic strategy for my dot file setup, Kohatli, is looks like this. It centers around this Bootstrap script. There's a bash script that I run, and what it does is it kind of checks for some of the tools that I require, and if those tools aren't present, it just basically gives an error message and says you need to go install that. So it's kind of a low-tech version. There are ways that you can get really fancy with this and have a script that goes out and installs everything, but frankly, I'm still running on the same laptop that I've had since 2014. And so this one just kind of keeps me honest of here are the things that you said you need to run some of your tools, and they're all in here. So I run that Bootstrap script to do that part. And what it does, the strategy of it is to takes my clone and creates symbolic links to directories in my home directory. So this Vim directory becomes .vim in my home directory, and so on. So that's how it works out. And it works pretty well for me, but you're welcome to check it out. All right, so let's look at the app and get in there. One thing that's going to be true of this app, no matter what, and people probably won't recognize it that much, which is fine. I don't anticipate them coming back to the onboarding experience. Is that these start pages will always be accessible. Hey, Kaxataz, welcome. We're doing some onboarding development here, so if you've got any Django questions, shoot them my way. I'll be trying to answer them. So we have this flow, and this flow has got 4 major steps. And you have to remember that my application is all about homeschooling. So it's all about setting up your school year for students. Presumably you're homeschooling some kids that live at your house or, are in your home, whatever, you know what I mean. And getting them set up, getting a minimal setup so that by the time you're actually clicking around in the application views, there's enough data there. So this flow is it's kind of an introductory letter. You can clearly see I'm not quite done with it. There's some obvious call outs here. But it sets up a school year. It sets up the first grade level that someone wants to use. It adds a course to that grade level because a student is enrolled in a particular grade level. And then it gives them their first task. And after that, they have enough data that if they go to the school year page and see the flow, they'll be able to say, oh yeah, I created that. I understand where this stuff goes. So that's what this is about. Most of these steps are already in place, and we can kind of click through them. And I think I've already got a pretty robust account, so a lot of these won't even be forms. They'll just tell you to go on to the next step. But you have to create a school year. Like I said, you have to create a grade level, and you have to create a course. Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat. And it's this last one that I need to wrap up. So you look like this looks like the same view, and it's because it is right now. Even though it's a different URL, it's pointing to the same Django view. So we need to make this course task thing work. And so each of these steps is kind of building off of the previous one. And so one of this middle step, so there's basically like three states that it has to think about. So the grade level, for example, it needs to say like, is there a school year yet? That's a precondition coming in. And so if there's no school year yet, it's just going to say, you can't do this step yet. You need to go to the next one, because I'm not going to block people from actually clicking these buttons. They'll be able to have this experience where they can kind of click around. So there's the checking of the precondition. And then there's like a post-condition check. So if a grade level already exists, it'll say like, hey, wait a minute, you've already done this step. Go on to the next one. So the same is going to be true of all of these steps so along the way, which means that our last thing here will be have a precondition check to say, does a course exist? And then if there is a task that exists, then it will just say like, congratulations, you're done, or maybe I'll even do a redirect right back to where they should be. I'm not really sure yet. But the goal here is to give them the data, and then when it's all done, put them on this page, which, why did that do that? That was weird. That should not go. Oh, this is in the past now. Haha. Look at that. I've been doing this long enough that my end date has passed. So normally this button would take you right to this page, but because my school year is now in the past, that's no longer right. So I'm going to edit this really quick because I'm not going to remember to change that. Let's just make it a 2-year school year, even though that's ridiculous. Whoops. Well, I've got guards against that. Clever me. How about let's do like April for now. I'm just going to buy myself some time for now. So, good question. So your question is like, what is the objective for this? And my focus is there's a good couple questions in there. So my goal is to primarily make something for my spouse. That's first and foremost. Like she's using a tool currently. It's got some stability problems. It's got some security problems, things that are not great about it. So I'm making a tool that is uniquely suited for her needs as an elementary school educator, because that's the age of my kids, or they're both elementary age. And so that's my first goal. And the thought is, if I can make a good tool for her, because I want to put time into making something of quality for my spouse, that then I can turn around and extend that to others. So my goal is to start there, let her have an experience with the app, and she's going to identify all the things that like I needed to do this, and this. Like already, what you see in front of you are driven largely by these are the things that she identified. This way of viewing the calendar, this way of doing a number of these things are things that she identified. And so I'll go through that cycle a few times. Make sure that it's actually working in my own household so that I have some amount of proof that like I'm convinced that this is a solid product that can be used for other people. From there, I've got plans to reach out to broader communities. For example, I've joined a forum and have started to engage with some homeschool communities that exist. So this is one particular one. It's called the Well-Trained Mind, and I'm going to start interacting with them and doing market research, and asking people, and eventually kind of start very small. Look for a small set of like beta users that would be willing to try the app, because some of the big unknowns for me right now is I don't have high school kids or even middle school kids, so my kids are young. I don't know how well the application would work for someone who's much farther along in their education of their children. And so that's the strategy, to start there and get a small group of people. And hopefully if a couple of families, if I can get 3, 4, 5, 6 families, something along those lines, to use it as a set of beta users, and really knock out all the pieces that are going to be important, then I can start shifting that to switching from a beta set to a set of actual customers over the long run. And I have some ideas on how to do that, which I can talk through, but I'm going to save that topic for another day. But that's the rough plan. My main focus, and to finish off your question, you're asking about where this is focused on. I'm focusing primarily in the USA right now because I'm not multilingual. I mean, I took some Spanish in high school, but I'm nowhere close to that. So I'm not going to internationalize this right away. I'm going to seek a set of customers, and maybe there's a future where I internationalize and make it for a broader reach, but that gets pretty complicated in a hurry. Not that I don't want a broad set of people to use it, but you just got to bite off one little chunk at a time. And if the app is wildly successful, then it would make sense to try and expand it to other regions possibly. Hope that answers your question. Okay, so getting back to the application. The start flow is going to put people back at a school year when it's all done. Come on now. Firefox changed something about the way they would highlight stuff that is not to my liking anymore. Anyway, so when they finish this flow, they'll get dumped to that school year page that we just saw, and I'll open it up in a second one. And then hopefully they'll have enough information. They'll have created their school year. They'll see some buttons about what they need to do. Might even have some kind of call out, kind of congratulating them on, you're done, and here's what to do next. I'm not really sure yet. But the actual actions from onboarding and this experience of this step by step will be done, and they'll kind of hand it off to them to go explore more of the application if I can. So that means that I need to finish this, and let's take a look at what else is on this onboarding milestone, things that I thought about that are going to be important to make sure that the app doesn't feel incomplete. Maybe y'all have experienced this, I don't know, but you can go to certain products and you can get off of their blessed path. If you can get off of their main path and find areas where they're just like, it doesn't seem like the user interface is right. Like it doesn't understand what's going on because there's not enough data there. And that's certainly true of my app today. Like if I created a new account and didn't create a school year and tried to go to this like week view, none of this data would be here. So it would be all in fact, I'm not even sure that you'd see like some date range. So it'd be this really confusing UI of like, what do I do with this page? So a lot of ways to add polish to a SaaS application is to deal with those different error states, those edge cases, that things that differentiate a really crappy experience from a good experience. So those are the things that I've tried to add to onboarding here. That week view that you saw, that is the main app view. That is the view that I intend for users to kind of live in and day out, to see the schedule of their students. But that view doesn't make any sense until you have students set up, until you have a school year set up. So I want to add different empty state conditions that do a query to check and make sure, do you have a student? Do you have a school year? Those kind of things. And when you don't, there needs to be some kind of friendly messaging there that says like, hey, we noticed you don't have this set up yet. Here's something kind of pretty to look at, probably like something visual. Here's some explanatory text of why you're seeing this view right now, what you're missing. And here's a big old button that says, here's what you do next. Go click over here, and that's how you get to your next thing. So those are what these issues are about, is adding some empty states. I also have this thought of, we've got this start UI, this toolbar. I'm thinking about ways where I can integrate this into other views. So like this weekly view, this daily view, any of these places where they depend on a bunch of data, I want to have that stuff, I want to have a call out to kind of guide people along. So I want to be able to highlight, like, this toolbar is not very smart right now, this banner thing. So if you've already completed, like look at this thing right now. Let's just pause and observe what it is right now. It's on the start page, it's on this welcome to school desk, but all of these activities of creating the school year, creating a grade level, creating a course, they're already done for this user account that I'm on. So I want to incorporate some logic into this banner so that it can like highlight this as a done step. And I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if it's going to be grayed out text. I don't know if it's just going to jump you to the right point and give you a message. I haven't really thought through that yet. But I kind of want the path to force you along to say, okay, this is ready. You don't need to revisit this. Because even though I have this empty state there, like, why would a user want to come to this page? Like, if they had a visual signal that you've already created a grade level, they don't need to even click this button again. They never need to see this page. This is a last resort of, oh, you ended up here somehow, I'm sorry. But that's not really what I want to do. So this banner is going to get smarter in the final version of the onboarding, so that I can, and that's what this issue is about, showing progress. And then I think, what's this one? Well, maybe they're similar. No, this one is about putting this, the banner thing on the main app page, and this one is about showing the different state and different information. Okay, so that's all that's left in this milestone. You probably all didn't care about that much detail, but that's what I'm planning to do probably for the next couple of streams. Is I really want to finish this off and polish it and make it nice, so that when I do ask beta users to come in, I'm not scrambling to say like, oh yeah, I gotta get something that will be doable, because the benefit of having your spouse as your first client is like, as she was experiencing things, she could just say like, you're missing this, or this doesn't make sense, or like, so it's a different kind of feedback loop. When you have someone who is not in your home, they need a little bit more guidance through the app, and I'm hoping to set that up before they even get to it. All right, that was a lot of talk. Let's get to the code, shall we? We want to work on this one, and this thing, some parts of it are already done, and plenty is not. So there are, all these things need to be here. These are the rough list of things that I talked about, like all the preconditions, and let's look at what's there. So I'm going to go to the start URLs is where I put all this stuff, all these views. And I've got the name of this last view, and you can see right now it's using the same view, start course view. That's why the appearance, when I clicked on that, even though it was the right URL, if you looked at the URL bar, that would have been correct, but the actual view itself was wrong. So that needs to change. But that means that this aspect of creating the URL itself is done. So let's make sure we have a test that actually can check some of these basic states, and then we can start checking. We can switch it to the right view and start adding the context there and getting these pieces ready to go. So I'm going to go to the core test views file, maybe test views. There it is. And we're going to look for the test start course view, because I want to put it after this. Let's just where is this? Okay. So it's pretty close to the bottom of the file. And in fact, some of these, I found that these views are so similar that I'm going to start from the same set of test cases, the same set of tests, and we'll create this, and it's going to complain because it's the same name. And the view, I'll say this is the start course task view. And what is the view name? Bring up that file again. Start course task. Okay. And so let's highlight all of these. Again, I don't know if I need all these tests yet. So this is maybe a little overkill, but it's easier to do it this way than the other. And I'm just going to do a find replace and say substitute start course with start course task. So that will change all of those. All of the reverses there. So now that that's done, we can do run this first test, which should pass because right now this is relying on the view, and the view has a login required mixin, and that mixin is what's protecting access to the view because I don't want anybody who's not logged in to be able to access this page. So we'll take our core views file here, and it's getting a little small. I might, well, it's fine for now. And it looks like I already have a start course task view. And but notice what it is right now. Right now it's a template view. It's right here. And notice also that the template itself is pointing at start course. So it's, even if I switch to this thing, it'll still look wrong, but that's okay. It gets us a step closer. I like making small little changes and testing those. Like if, for example, this view isn't doing anything right now, but if I got this wrong, not only does my editor tell me, but if I ran the test, it's going to blow up and say like, I can't find this view. So that's doing these little changes and then testing them is a good strategy overall. We aren't going to need that file anymore because we've fixed the URL. The URL is now pointing to the right view. The rest of the job is making the view correct and ultimately changing the template and making the template correct. I'm going to start with the view logic and put in all of the data that I expect and care about there, and then we'll move to the template and make the template correct. So it's just kind of working through the steps, and I want to get close to the data as possible to start. So we have this view. In fact, I'm going to switch this. Let's do it. Let's reorient this way. That way we get can see. I don't know if it's actually better or worse. I don't know. So what do we need? We need probably a lot of the data from the previous test. We've already checked that this test should now pass because it's pointing at the right thing, and what it's testing is this that this mixin exists. So if I delete that for a second, rerun the test, it'll fail, just to prove that it is a failing test if the right condition isn't met. So we've got that check. That's done. The next thing that we want to see is what is it we want to see? let's make a task. The task is going to be part of the course. This is the setup of the modeling that I have. And we want, we don't care about the grade level in the context, but we do care the things that, remember, we want to check two things. We want to check the precondition. There is a course, and that's going to be needed if we need to display the form and automatically fill it in. And we want to check the post condition of a task that's already created. So we want to add, we will want to assert that the task is in the context as well. So I'm going to call it task and give it that. And this should fail because that task, well, there's a bunch of the reasons why it fails, because I didn't do a number of parts. All right, we'll carry on. I'm not going to change the view type yet. That's not needed. We will eventually, because there's going to be a form view on the course task, but I'm not ready for that step yet. We're going to work on just the context data. So let's take the context that's here. And what do we need? We need, all I really want to do is query for a course. I don't care where the user, so like let's imagine that the user's been using the app for years and they happen to come back to this page. I don't care, like, because the realistic flow is that somebody's going to do this onboarding, if they're going to do it at all, they're going to do this onboarding experience for the first time. So all I need to do is check that there's a course associated with that user. The difficulty with that, though, is that I can't just query all the courses and grab the latest one, because that's not going to make sense. And the only way that I know that a course belongs to a user is through the grade level, because the hierarchy of this, it's time to bring up the good old model diagram. Is the school is at the root. So the user themselves, the person with an account, is the owner of a school. That is their home school. And for every school, there can be one or more school years. And then for every school year, there can be one or more grade levels. And the grade level is the thing that is connected to the course somewhere. There it is. It's through this intermediate model table. And so the only way that you know a course belongs to somebody is by looking at a grade level that's associated with them. It's kind of a roundabout way to get to a course, but it's just the nature of how the modeling happened to happen for this app. So we have to work with that. So we'll return over here, and this query that is here may actually be the right thing, because this view was getting the course, or trying to get a course, based on if it could find a grade level. And so a lot of this logic, I might even need to like recycle and refactor some of this logic. So there might be a need to have a grade level mix in. Is that what I want to do? Let me think through this for a second. Because you can only get to the course from the grade level. And can I do, I'm wondering if I can like get away with not querying this way. So what if I did, well, let's assume that I don't want to do that. That I don't care about that strategy right now, because I don't actually need the grade level as part of the context. Let's assume I want to go straight to the course and straight to the task. So what would that filter look like? That filter would be like, let's see, course. I'm just going to make up what I think is the right filter. And if Django gets mad at me, then we'll deal with it. So we'll say grade levels, and a grade level has a school year. And the school year has a school. And the school is going to be the self request. This is going to look ugly. I promise we'll fix this. And like this. So if this is going to navigate the right hierarchy, there's going to be multiple grade levels. So it's going to look for, so we're going to tell Django, go all the way up this stack and go up to school year, up to school, and the user object in this system has a school property that it can access. And it's going to take a distinct and get me the first one of those. So I think that's going to be right. And hopefully that will solve. So there should only be a single course created in this OK, and that should get this first one if the query is correct. Great. It's correct because look, where it's actually failing is on this next line in the test, on the task. So to then get the task, so now we're going to do, I'm not going to assign that straight to the context. I'm going to rework this a little bit. Let's change this to be a course assignment to a variable. And then we'll do change to there, and we'll assign that to a local variable. So, because this could come back as none because of this first attribute on here. So the next thing I want to do is I want to say if there's a course, then we're going to look for a task. And because the course is already filtered, I can trust this course at this point because of this. The chain to get the right course went up through the courses that belong to this user through the school. That means that, in other words, it's safe to not worry about getting somebody else's one. So we have this course, and now we're safe to like query on any particular task. I just want the first one. It doesn't really matter because, again, the point here is not it's not to show some specific one. It's to say like, is there one at all? Because if one exists, then we don't need to do anything. In fact, now that I'm saying this out loud, it's really just a Boolean. I'm trying to think if I want the template to like show the task that was created. Well, it's okay. Let's just do the task. It's going to be slightly less efficient, but it's not really going to matter. So we'll say course task objects dot filter where course equal course, and we're going to grab the first one. Whoops. First. All right. Now we've got that, and looks like we need to import the course task, which is in the courses app. So course task. And now we also need to assign this to the context. I'm not going to use it for any other purpose, so let's just go straight to the context here rather than assigning it to a local variable. Okay. So, and we don't need any of that stuff. Now this test should pass. Great. What else should we say here? We want, this is still a test we want. We want to prove, so I want to have the confidence, and I want automated tests to be able to prove this, that my permissions remain true. That if I were to ever do something silly, like delete this line by accident, and it filter and just give me any course, I don't want that to happen because it's very important to me that my kids' data not leak out to any user that might be on the platform. Likewise, I want to be able to offer the same guarantee to any users that I have is you shouldn't be able to access anybody else's stuff. And the way that I'm doing that is by making sure everything exists under the school. So it's always checking through that permission level. So this test that we want here is the second test, and probably the third one as well, is to make sure that the task and the course that show up in the context, they can only belong to the user. So we'll rename this to be only user's course, and it's going to complain because this one has the same name. And so, oh, that's interesting. Hey, welcome. I don't quite know how to pronounce your handle, Sicilio. Glad you're here. If you have any questions for me, we're just working on a Django app, and I'm writing some tests for some onboarding stuff that I'm doing right now. And I'm currently looking at why I wrote something the way I wrote it. So this test that I wrote from this other file does not need a grade level. That's a waste of creation. That test should still pass without that. Oh. Maybe there's something else going on there. Okay. Never mind. So we're going to create a course here. And this course factory, by not taking any input parameters, is basically proving that, or by not taking any input parameters, it's not connected to the user that we created. So the self-make user has no connection to this particular course factory. So we're going to then say course is none, should be the correct assertion. And that's true. And the course must belong to the user. And all that we care about is the task must belong to the user. It doesn't even need to be tied to the grade level. Because again, I don't care. Because if you're at the end of that process, if you have any task, you have done the onboarding work. The only reason that the other ones need to be more exact in making sure that they're connected is because they're in sequence with each other. So this one about tasks is going to be just the course task factory, and we can delete even that. So this is definitely going to be disconnected, and then task should be none. Thanks, I appreciate that. If you have any questions for me, I'm here to answer them, so fire away. I'm realizing now that this task, I probably need to, in order to get coverage on this thing, I probably need an actual course associated with the user. Because look, if I don't, then, well, no, never mind. I have an actual test case that will get to this line. So this is probably okay. Yeah, it's not the best test, but it's okay. That's it's not the best test when it's not working. What did it do there? Context. Oh, it didn't even put it in there, right? Yes, because I didn't have the course. Okay. Well, let's go create a course then. So I'm gonna create a course that belongs to the user, so that it will go to this path and actually run this line and add the tasks to the context. It's kind of overkill, but whatever. Okay, so what do we have? We have the happy path test. That's what this test is for. We have one that proves that the task, that the course and the task are in the context, or that they're not in the context on these error cases. And then we're going to have this final test that is actually testing that posting the right data will create a course. So we want to fill in the data that matters to actually make the course connection. So let's go and look at the course models and figure out what the course task model needs. I think it just needs a name, I think, and it's been a long time. So it's going to need the foreign key. I know that. And description. Description is like just all the information that goes into it. And I don't know if I can get away with... Yeah, I can probably... The duration is required. And that's going to come from the course default. There's a default duration for how long something should be. And then we can leave the grade level none because this is going to be for onboarding, so they're not going to be able, this is a specific feature for something else. Don't worry about this aspect. So these are the fields that we care about. Course, your UID will be auto-generated. It's going to need a description. And I think it's going to require us to put in a duration as well in order to pass. So here we go. We're going to come back to the OK path where it has the course that belongs to the user. And we're going to put that there. And the data is going to be description, which will be my first task. I'm not being very creative about that. I don't have to be though. And the duration will say what will we say? We can say the string value of course default duration. And finally, what was the last thing I said we needed? Oh, we need the actual course itself. So foreign key to the course. So that's going to be course stir course ID. All right, so this test will fail. It's not going to do a redirect. Oh, I'm not even going to get the right attribute. Default task duration. Okay. All right, let me take a look at your question here. You've got a question about creating a SaaS for data analytics. Okay, well, what's your question? I can't promise I know much about data analytics or making specific BI web pages, but I can try and help out where I can. You're not able to show different graphs. Okay. So do your graphs, the first question I'd ask is like, does your graph, I'm assuming you have some kind of graph model and you're pulling data about them. So you need to have some way to say that this user owns this graph data, unless it's like shared. So that it kind of gets complicated on what you expect your app to do. Is it individual users own the data, or is it like an organization owns the data and a user happens to be part of that organization? In either case, you need some kind of thing that is the owner, whether it's the individual or a group of people. It doesn't really matter. And that thing would have to own the data. So that's how you would differentiate between different graphs. Is like so you can't. If you expected this notion is called multi-tenancy. Multi-tenancy, and it's the idea that you have multiple people that can be using your application. In order to segment that properly, in order to give everybody their own space, you have to draw those lines yourself. There are tons of ways to do this. Again, like as you pointed out, we're kind of working on something else, so I'm not going to dig too deep into that. But the way that I've done it in this app and what I've kind of shown is that my users here can only get to a course because they own it through the relationships that are there. In other words, through the fact that they own a school. So by a course being part of a school, a user can view that. So I don't know how your application needs to be structured or what the modeling is, but at some level, you have to make your data have a notion of an owner. Again, group or user, doesn't matter. And once you can do that, then you can get the appropriate filters in there and have the appropriate foreign keys. So now if you can say, let's just run through the two basic examples. If you have a user and the user is the owner of the data, so you have a foreign key on graph of data. I don't know what your data looks like, so I'm just going to be kind of hand wavy about it. Then you would do a filter where the filter is the user and you get the right date range. I don't know what instance you have or whatever, but that's the way that you could display the graph for that particular user. The other scenario where you have an organization, you first probably find out the user's organization, query for that first, get their org, and then do the foreign key query on your graph data model. Yeah. So in that scenario, you get the group first, and then you look and see like, okay, this person is part of this group, therefore they can see this analytics data. And this is still simplifying it. Like you could have really complex schemes of, even within an organization, you might have different teams. Like this can get really, really crazy, as you might be able to imagine. So I'm just kind of trying to outline what I think are our two really prominent strategies. But in either case, they involve like you have to have that association between something owns the data, and then you need to be able to draw the line of like, can I filter to that or not? I hope that helps a little bit. All right, getting back to this post test, we've got the fields that I think are going to be important, but this thing should fail. And the reason it's going to fail is because this isn't a template view. So it's returning the 405 response, which is the HTTP response code for HTTP methods that a URL does not handle. And it's even giving us a friendly version that says, hey, I only handle these 3 methods. And that's because I haven't made this into a view that I can actually take a post. The view as it exists right now is only a template view. And a template view is designed to be a view that you do a GET request on. It's designed to show you information. So if we want to create a new thing, then I need to use a different kind of view, a create view, that will give us this extra stuff that we care about. The downside of doing this, as you'll see, I'll try to rerun the test, is it's going to say, hey, you don't have this configured properly. It needs more information. So it needs like a form, or it needs a query set, or a model. It needs something else, because you need to tell Django what it is you want to create. So we are going to change this thing. We have a create view. I have some form classes that I'm doing. And the reason I'm using form classes is to do some extra checking, to kind of guarantee that when somebody tries to create a form, that they have permission to do that. For example, some random user should not be able to add new tasks to somebody else's course. So the form does the appropriate checking to make sure that that's not allowed. Which means I probably already have this form available, and I just need to go get it, because I'm creating tasks in other parts of my application. So here it is, the course task form. Oh, it has even things I forgot about here. Okay, we'll still use it anyway. So we're going to come back into the view, and we're going to add the form class. And I don't want this form class, I want the task form. and I haven't imported that, so we need to come up and import it. Okay. So that's step one. The other thing to note is this particular form requires the user to be added to it, because I do some stuff in the clean method that requires the user attribute, and it just needs to be there. So the view probably, no, this one takes a school year. There's got to be one that takes a user. Here we go. So I need to use this get form keyword arguments. That is a method that is available to create view. And what that says is that it is the arguments that will be passed along to the form when it's created. So that will help the user, it'll help this to work. So actually, let's try running it without, see what's going to happen. It's going to fail, and I'll see if it fails in the right proper way. It might get some other obscure error. Nope, it did what I expected. So when the form is created, it gets the keyword arguments, and it tries to look for the user keyword argument. And it does a pop on it, which is basically saying, like, throw an error, in this case, a key error. Sorry. Drink some water. Sorry about that. In this case, a key error if it's not present. So by adding this form keyword arguments, what that's going to do is the create view is going to take whatever dictionary you provide here, and it was going to pass those along to the form, which will help it get past the init method, which expects the keyword argument of a user. So now if we run this thing, we're getting closer, but we still are missing. So it's actually looking like it's gotten through and created a record, which is good. But it's saying, like, it doesn't know where to redirect the user to, and it's doing that in kind of a weird way. Well, I guess there's a couple of errors here, and so how do you read this? There's a lot of stack trace. Like, look at this thing. Your first one is this attribute error, which seems weird. And then it says during the handling of this, then you get down further and there's another big stack trace that is a bunch of stuff, and then you get here, which says, you know, it's actually this thing. So I don't have great advice here. My best advice is, like, scan through the errors, like, and if the first one doesn't make sense, go to the next one. Like, you might encounter this and say, oh, I guess I need to define get absolute URL, which is a possible answer, but it may not be the answer you want, because this answer has implications. So you continue reading and you read that it says, oh, okay, well, this is actually it says it's improperly configured. You don't have a URL, so you either can do the get absolute URL thing from above on the model, or you can do something else. And the point is like, be careful with error messages and read them all, because they're going to teach you different things. That's kind of my soapbox lesson for the day. Hopefully y'all can indulge me on that. But thankfully I know the framework really well, and I know that what I'm missing is this thing right here. So what it was really happening there, it was going through the default implementation of get success URL, and get success URL says look for this get absolute URL attribute on the model if it exists, or throw an error. So you can either pick from a default for the model instance, or you can do something special. And since this is an onboarding flow, I actually want to do the special thing. I don't want to go to some particular course. I want to control this direction a bit more. So I'm going to put it, control it directly. And so where do I want to send them? That's a good question. Oh, check that then. Check this thing out. That's funky. Do not want to send them to start course task. That was a bad find and replace. I want to send them to the school years view, I think. I think that's where they want to be. Like I said, at the end of the flow, it should have a page that takes you somewhere else that kind of dumps you right in the school year. And that view, I don't remember the path to it, so we need to look it up. It's called current school year. Okay, so that's where I want to send them. So let's change all this thing, and we'll say schools current school year is the desired success location. And let's do the same thing there. And do a post. Hey, look at that. We've got all the data. So that tells me something as well, that the form I was looking at, this is graded attribute, it's not required. So I didn't have to include it. And it defaults to false. So it's going to create an ungraded task, which is fine. The other thing I want to do here, which I'm surprised I didn't do it on the other test. Kind of silly. Yeah, that's dumb. Let's stop for a second. We're going to go back to the other test to make this test better. So I want to find a course that has the name of astronomy. And because the way the tests work, the database will be free and clear of any other courses. It should be. So I can just do this of name equal astronomy. And I want it to exist. That just proves that I actually created a course record. Whoops. Exists, plural. And I want a similar check down below here on the post of this task one. So we want to say course task, and then we want to say description of my first task. And it's just something easy to query on. I could be checking other stuff like, is it connected to the right course? And yeah, I could do all that, but I've got this particular form. I've tested this thing extensively, and I trust Django's create view, so I'm not going to waste my time doing a lot of that. So let's go find. I need to add the right model, which is where it's up here. Course task. And that should fix that. Now we've got a passing test. Okay, cool. So what's left? Well, why don't we run the tests to see if everything's running okay. It should only take about 15 seconds or so. The reason I'm running this is I have a requirement on my own application to make sure that I'm testing every line of code. And so I have this coverage target that actually runs my test suite through the Python coverage tool so that it can check everything. And you can see here, we've got 100% coverage. So that's good news. But now it's time to break some stuff. Because recall that this thing I said that we need to do after getting the data is work on the template. So we are using the right form, so I can trust. I'm going to just go through this checklist of what we need. We have the context for a course and the context for a task, so that's all good. And now we're ready to move on to the template stuff. And we did do the redirect, so that's good too. So see, we're just checking off stuff without even realizing it. So step one to do this is I'm going to leave it on this test, which is just the happy path test. And I'm going to come over to the view, and we're going to call this start course task. And that's immediately going to fail because the template doesn't exist. And we got the right exception telling us exactly that. The template does not exist exception. Very appropriately named. The next thing I want to do, in my opinion, the view is done, so we can leave that file. So let's go to find the start course template, which is right nearby where we want. In fact, it's going to be the thing that I want to start from. And we're going to copy all of that and create the start course task template and paste it in. All right. Now we're going to come back to our test and rerun it, and the test is going to pass again. Doesn't mean that the content's right. In fact, we know for a fact that the content is wrong. But now we have the split that we want. So even though the content is going to look like the course view for now, it won't for very long. So I think we're at a stage where it makes sense to bring up the server and return to looking at this onboarding stuff. And I'm going to click this last page, and it's showing the wrong thing here, but we're going to fix this up. And the title at the top that you actually can't see because I kind of hide my tabs says add a course, and I want to change that. So what I'm kind of been picking these from based on the titles that are in here. So this is create a grade level. That says create a grade level in the title, add a course. So I'm going to say make your task as the title, or how about just make a task? That'll work. So make a task. And I'm going to refresh. Wrong page. So it's saying make a task. Just to prove it, here you go. Hopefully you can see that. There's the title. Okay. Now it's time to change the actual content. We still want to include the start banner. I forgot about the banner. We might have to tweak that as well. So let's bring up, I think we're basically done with the test as well. I'm done with the tests. The rest of this is about getting the template right, and I could, how do I describe this? So some people might say, write a test that does like an end-to-end test that actually fires up a browser and reuses your real form and gives you confidence that from a test level that your forms are correct. I'm not going to that level. And that's, I don't belittle anybody who does that route. That's perfectly fine. But for the level of effort I want to add to this particular application, that's not something I am interested in doing. So I'm not going to do that. So my satisfaction is anytime I'm working on the templates, knowing that it's just me, I'm going to be checking these templates as I modify them. And short of me doing something really crazy with the HTML on a dramatic level, I don't expect that stuff to start breaking. And if it did, if that happened in the future, then I would be interested in adding actual automation testing that tests some of those things using like Selenium or something like that. But that's not where I'm at. So we want to get down to this last step, and I already have this step defined. So I'm going to change it to task is the name attribute that it's checking for, and it's going to re-render. It's going to move this button to be over here, which it did. And so now it's no longer clickable. Now I could go back to the course one if I wanted, and now we have the proper separation on that banner. So that part's done. Okay, what's next? Let's just keep moving down the template. In fact, I think we're at a point where we can give ourselves the whole template to see. So this particular aspect of something, it has to do with the alignment of a form. So it's just about checking the right state. So and it's kind of like, it's checking the pre and post conditions, but these are the pre and post conditions for the course view. So we want to know that the post condition, which is what that was, is the task. And we want to say, or not course, then that's when we want to do those. This is now going to be the previous, this is now the new post condition, which is the task. And I'm calling it post condition because it's the thing that after we posted, after we created it. And this is the precondition is satisfied. And then this else clause is what happens when you don't have it. So we're going to have to monkey with this because my account that I'm testing with here does have course, it does have tasks, so it's going to jump straight to the one that says you're done, which is not quite what we're going for. So let's see what that looks like first. It says your first course is ready to go. So it's checking, it's going down to this task. So really it needs to say your first task is complete. And then we can say the next step is to go look at your school year. So we want to say it's time. What can we say? You can check out your school year. And this one isn't super important because again, they're already done. So they should never be, ideally they shouldn't be coming back to this page. We're kind of just putting in something that if they happen to come back for some reason, like they hit the back button in their browser, it's not like it's impossible, but it's not something that's going to be super common either. So we're going to change the URL to the same one that the post redirected to, which is schools current school year, and that will direct them there. And we'll change the text to be see your school year. I think that'll work. So let's see what that looks like. So that feels pretty good. I want to also change the imagery. So let's go back through the flow. Start over here. So observe the positioning. So this first one, I have it on the left. Then I move to the right. Then I move to the left. Then I move to the right. Then I move to the left. I haven't done it yet. So we're going to flip these around in a minute. And but I'll get to that in a minute. Let's make sure that the forms and the copy are all correct. And then we can go perhaps find a new image that is representative of a task and fill that in. And I kind of already have one that I've been using elsewhere that I might just reuse for this one. Okay, so we have to basically, for the rest of this form, we sort of have to fake it. We have to fake, we're going to pretend like we don't have a task. The easiest way to do that is just say, it's just going to change that to not. So actually, before I even do that, let's go ahead and add these files to the Git stage so we don't, so now we're kind of tracking the changes as we're going along. So we're going to say not. So it's going to come out here. It's going to go to hit the elif. And because I do have a course right here, it's going to change us to this middle block. And the alignment's going to be a little funny because of this stuff. So do we need to change this? Let's try that. Okay. So this is where I set the copy to explain what a task is, what it does. And so I need to probably, I'm trying to make these as simple as possible. And if you saw back from that test that the parameters that it took for the post were only these three attributes. That's all I needed. What I want the user to add to this equation is this description part. So I can, for the onboarding flow, I can just give them the default duration, and I can give them the course that they just created. I'm going to tell them the course so that they know where the task is going to be created, and I'm just going to give them a description field. That's the plan. So we can come down here, and we're going to recycle a lot of the form that's here. I'll leave the copy alone. The copy is just the paragraph, the descriptive text, if you're not familiar with that term. It's kind of a advertising speak as you talk about your marketing copy, which is sort of weird, I confess, but that's the way it is. And so we have a course, so we're going to plug in the hidden field of a course, and we're going to plug in the duration, and this is where the value needs to come from the course itself. So we're going to say course default task duration. Well, that will fill in that one. And the form field that we care about is going to be the description. And I need to give it some placeholder text. So what should we say? Let's say I don't know. This is like, how about this? Because this is talking about your first task. So maybe it's like an assignment to a student to read chapter 1. I don't know. And that way, it's just meant to kind of guide people along, give them something that they can attach, they can figure out what is appropriate for their scenario. And so that's the form. So let's refresh it, see what it looks like. So now it's got this thing that says description. Got a placeholder in there, create the task. Let's check out the form. Let's look at the page source. Let's go to those hidden fields. And we've got our CSRF middleware token, that's good. We've got our course, that's also good. And we've got a duration that is filled in from the default, which is also good. This broke now because there's grade level was not in the context, so that would have said the grade level, but it's not there. So let's put in some kind of maybe not so great copy, and it's just as a start. So let's say, how about, it's time to create your first task for course. Course is going to return the string version of this, and I like to use not dumb quotes, so I get the special quote marks, but I always have to copy paste them. So a dumb quote is the straight up and down quote, and the regular quote marks that you would read in like a book are curved and stuff. Or fancy typography fact, a dumb quote is also called a prime mark. There's some random knowledge for you. So I also want to make the course be bold and in your face. So it's time to create your first task for blah that your student will do. That's probably good enough. What does that look like? It's time to create your first task for reading 2 that your student will do. Sure. Thankfully, I have a spouse and a client who can look at this and say, like, Matt, that was really terrible. You need to go change that. So it's kind of good enough, but I'm going to get a second pair of eyes on it with some actual, someone who's actually good at copywriting. My wife has got a talent for that, but I do not. But this gets the idea across of just putting something out there and making it go. What can we say? I don't think we need this paragraph. We can make this simpler. And what is or how would you describe the task? I don't know, because I called it a description. It's kind of lame. But it'll work for now. All right, the thing we want to check now. So let's check this while we're here. So this is going to go on reading 2, and it'll be added to the bottom. So we'll say from onboarding, we're going to create the task. And it sent us to the school year. It went to the right spot. And I'm trying to imagine, like, this is my first time using this application. This stinks. Like, people are going to be like, what the heck? What am I doing now? So we need some final message that will say, like, congratulations, you're done. You've completed onboarding. Go do that. Or go and be merry and create for the rest of your school year. So let's create another task here, because I'm really not digging how that's going. So let's call it a celebration. Celebrate onboarding completion. That's really what we want. We want to show the user that they did it, that there's like clear next steps. Maybe even the onboarding completion message could be, I'm thinking of making like a big banner that says, like, big different box that really calls it out and can be used to kind of hint at next steps, can hint at maybe go here. Because it is, at this point, after you've inserted your basic information, it becomes a choose your own adventure of what's important to you next. If you're someone who is really just experimenting with this, of what's this going to look like for my school year, maybe you want to go straight to creating a student and enrolling that student just to see what it would look like to have them enrolled with one task. The other more meticulous kind of planner type of person might say, like, you know what, I actually want to create a bunch of tasks for my student and create a bunch of courses and populate a bunch of data before I go on. So no matter what, just dumping them to the school year page and expecting them to know what to do next is not setting them up for success, and probably would be a spot where, if I just walk them through, you had to create this data and this data and this data and this data, and didn't show them the benefits of that and keep them engaged, there's probably going to be a pretty dramatic abandoning of the application, would be my guess. So let's put that in there. And I don't think I'm going to get to that tonight, but I'm going to just throwing that out there. Think through these things when you're designing your own app. I think they're important attributes. What can we say though? That what we can say is that form worked. In fact, let's go look at reading 2. It picked this random one that happened to be the first course. And if we go to reading 2 and go to the bottom, Here it is, from onboarding. And it's got our default duration. The previous task is lying. It's not the last task, but you can see it's not graded. So the user would be able to go to their school year, go see their grade level immediately, go see their first course, click on it, and get to that. But it's nice to be able to verify that. So let's go back to this view, and I think that means that I'm done with that aspect for now. Although what's left? So we want to do, there's one more thing we want to check, and it has to be this last case. So in order to even get to this last case, we need to add another not to force it to go down to the else branch. All right. And so we can return this to this state. That's going to put it back in the center, which is where we want it. And notice that what this one was doing, remember this came from the course template. So this one is pointing you back a direction. So this language needs to be about, you don't have a course yet, so we need to go create a course. So let's do the simple version of this, just updating it as minimally as we can. Before you can make a task, you need a course. And then we'll say, send them to start course, should be the right place, and create course should be the button. So that should send them back. Yep. So this doesn't make sense right now because the course is actually there. We're kind of lying, but you can imagine that if somebody got to this page, and I can totally imagine this happening. Somebody signs up for the app for the first time. They get to this view. They spend, because people don't read. It's amazing. Human psychology is fascinating. So they won't read this. They probably won't even see this button. They'll be like, "Oh, how do I get to the end?" And they'll be like, just let me do this. And that's where we're going to catch it. That's where people are most likely to do it. And it's at that point where they'll see this message and they'll be like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess I got to go do this." And they'll go back and they'll say, "Oh, okay, I guess I got to go back." And they'll eventually work their way back to this first one that walks them through the school year. So there's no escaping, like, you have to do these things. But having this kind of chain of things that you that are breadcrumbs of you didn't do this thing yet and you need to do it is a good encouragement. Okay, so what's left? Let's go clean up the template so that make sure that it has the right logic for the if statements. So we want to take out the not there. That's not correct. We also want to take out the not here. And I already took out the not for this one. That gets us to, this is all correct now. But as I said, I want this to be a flipped version of this. So let's do that. And the way that I've done that on other areas is, let's go to the start grade level. And you can see that we've got the image in front. Because this is a flex box with it in a row setup. So it's just going based on the order of the divs here. So we can come to the bottom where this div is. Take this and come up to the top, put that there, and that's going to flip that around. Now, the downside of this is that this has margin right, so it's on the wrong side, I think. Let's see this. Let's inspect the grade level one. Yeah. So really what we need is the margin needs to move to the left side. That is creating the space that is between the image and the actual text, because it's flushed together right now. So if you look at the other one, you can see if I was to have a line, which actually I probably can. There we go. If I hover over this, you can see that the boundary of the image, it looks okay here because of the shape of the image and the gray silhouette there. But it's really, really pretty tight there. So we want to change this to margin left of 8, which bumps it over a little bit, gives it some breathing room. The other thing I want to do is, how can I show this? I'm already using a default, an image. These, you can tell I've got, create a bunch of these stupid courses that have nothing in them just for testing, but the goal is to show you something. Let's call it for onboarding. The image that I have for a first task is this one. And I think I might just recycle it because it is kind of showing what I want, which is it's a task. It's a woman who's creating things that can be checked off. Those sound like tasks to me, which is why I used it here. And it saves me from having to go out to Undraw to look for yet another image that is appropriate. In case you're curious and you've never encountered it before, there's this amazing service that's put up by Katerina Limputsoni. I probably always pronounce her name wrong, but I'm trying. And she has made a bunch of pretty amazing vector art that is searchable and free. And you can customize it to like the color of your app. So, for example, the search engine is powered by Algolia here, so we can type school and get things that are school-like. Like this should look familiar. I use that as my image. That should look familiar. I use that. So I've used this stuff and have I just selected the primary color of my application and dropped it right in, and it's really great SVG art to add to your project for free. Highly recommend it. The downside of it is that there are so many of them that you need to find the appropriate one, and you can't always find one that's a great fit. So I'm going to use an existing one that I've already used, namely this one, to do. So I'm going to say to do, not Toto, to do. And what I use these alt text, things to do. That seems good. Things to do as the alternative text. Now, if we return to the make a task page and refresh, hey, look at that. So that's the kind of the final image that I'll be using for this onboarding. So let's walk through the flow really quickly and then wrap up for the evening. We've got this like onboarding message that tells you thanks for joining. There's a call to action of going to the next thing. And each of these forms, if I was a new user account, would actually be a form. Here you're just seeing like, you already did this. But remember, I'm using a test account that's already got a lot of data. So there's a form there, there's a form there, there's a form there, and there's this last form. And after you complete this last form, it will take you here. And it's when you come here that you're going to eventually be greeted by something else that is going to celebrate the fact that you did it. That's what I'm not going to do tonight. So we've got the template for a missing course. That was the go back, the precondition thing. We've got the template for the existing task. That was the thing we just saw of you're done. Go check out your school. See your school year. So that's done. What else do we have? We pre-populated the duration for the task. I've got some really crummy copy to explain the tasks. So I'm pretty happy with this flow. This flow is like it's a first cut. So, was it the Churchill that said, plans never survive their first encounter with reality? Or I'm totally butchering that. I'll look that up later. No, I'm gonna look it up now. Churchill. I think that's what he said, something like that. Plans first encounter, quote, yeah. No plan survives contact with the enemy. There it is. Why did I say that? So I'm bringing up that point is like, this is my plan. This is what I think will work to help guide a user through the flow. But reality of actual users testing it out might say your onboarding stinks and it needs to change here, and here. But for lack of that information, I feel like this flow of building up the basic building blocks that are going to be needed is the right path to get a user engaged. So that brings us probably the end of the stream for this evening. What are we going to do next time? Next time, honestly, I'm not sure. I don't know how much time I'll have to work on this stuff. I may be working on that banner. I might have done it already by the time I get there, and we might not do it. No matter what, though, we'll probably be working through some of these to finish onboarding. It's not just done when you give them the steps that you want them to do. You need to have like guidance along the way to encourage people on, keep them engaged with your application, keep them feeling like I know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm equipped with the knowledge that I need, without them resorting to documentation because they're not going to read it, or just abandoning your application. That's the most likely action that will happen. And by having these kind of steps in place, it really helps to minimize all of that. There is other stuff that could be done, probably, like, I don't know, it could probably be gamified, which I don't really want to do. Like, you might see these on some apps that have like some kind of progress bar of like, here, you're almost done. You need to do such and such task and you'll be done with everything you need. Maybe that's appropriate. I'm not going to invest that much right now. I just want to have, remember, this is all in service of getting my first beta users working, and I don't want to guess any more about what they might need until I have some people go through that process. So I'm going to stick with my plan of what's on this milestone, and then declare victory from there. I will take this content and post it up on YouTube as usual. Hopefully you found some of this valuable this evening. If you did, give me a like on YouTube or a follow on here. Is that the right word? Follow, subscribe. I never get them straight. Give me a follow on here. I appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Take care.